My name is Clara Evans, and for 60 years I believed my marriage was a quiet, dignified partnership. I was wrong. I was a fool. The end of my life was peaceful. At 82 I simply closed my eyes and slipped away. Or so I thought. Instead of nothingness, my consciousness lingered, a wisp of smoke trapped in the currents of time. I thought it was a blessing, a final chance to watch over my husband Arthur and our son Daniel. I imagined my love was so strong it tethered me to them. I watched my own funeral. Arthur, ever the stoic professor, wore his usual expression of serene detachment. Daniel, a man in his 50s, was solemn. I felt a pang of sorrow for their loss, a twisted pride in the life I had built for them. That pride curdled into ash just 1 month later. The wedding was a lavish affair, a stark contrast to my quiet funeral. And the groom was my husband, Arthur. The bride was his first love, Isabella. I floated, a ghost at the feast, watching the man I had shared a bed with for 6 decades smile like a giddy youth. The deep wrinkles on his face contorted into a mask of pure joy, a sight I had rarely been privileged to see. He took the microphone, his voice thick with an emotion I never knew he possessed. "We may not have much time left," he declared to the applauding crowd, "but to spend even a few years with a partner whose heart and mind match mine is still a blessing. Being with someone who shares your interests makes even a moment eternal. Being with someone you don't love makes every moment pain." The words were a physical blow. Each one was a nail in the coffin of our shared history. A lifetime of compromise, of sacrifice, was reduced to every moment is pain. Then the screen lit up with photographs of them in their youth. Arthur, handsome and vibrant, his eyes alight with a warmth forever absent in our photos. Isabella was delicate, her smile gentle. And then came the letters. Dozens of them, their elegant handwriting a testament to a correspondence that had never ceased, not for 60 years. The audience cooed and applauded. "What a true gentleman Professor Evans is," someone murmured. "A shame his first wife was such an uneducated tigress. He wasted his life with her." The final betrayal came from my own son. Daniel took the stage and embraced Isabella. "Aunt Isabella," he said, his voice full of warmth, "you have no idea how much I've wished for a gentle and understanding mother like you." He didn't need to say the rest. The meaning was clear. I, his mother who had fought for every opportunity he ever had, was the obstacle to his happiness. I was the harshness in his life, the source of the pain. In that moment, the happy marriage I had cherished revealed itself as a grotesque lie. The serene husband was a fraud, and the son I had poured my soul into was a stranger who saw me as a burden. The weight of this truth was a crushing black despair. I wished for true oblivion. Then I opened my eyes. The scent of stale coffee and old books filled my nostrils. Harsh fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I was standing in a familiar hallway, the administrative wing of the university where Arthur worked. A man was speaking to me, his tone placating. "Clara, you can't say I stole the professor's spot to go abroad." When the leader asked him, he himself said he didn't care whether he went and would follow whatever arrangement was made. Of course, I should give the chance to the colleague who actively fights for it. Memory slammed into me with the force of a tidal wave. This was the day. The day Arthur's study abroad spot had been given to a more aggressive colleague, Hank. The day I, burning with a sense of injustice, had stormed the university to fight for what was rightfully his. The day I earned the nickname Tigress, that would follow me to my grave. And there he was. My husband. Arthur Evans. His hand was on my sleeve, tugging impatiently. His face, younger but already set in its mask of lofty indifference, was pinched with annoyance. "Clara, let's go," he hissed. "We're educated people. We can't make a scene like this. It isn't dignified." The feeling of his fingers on my arm, the sound of his voice, the sheer infuriating hypocrisy of it all. It was real. I was back. The ghostly pain of betrayal solidified into a cold, hard diamond of resolve in my chest. Heaven had felt my overwhelming resentment and given me a second chance. I looked at Arthur, truly looked at him. I saw the man who would let me do his dirty work, who would let me become the villain in his story so he could remain the saint. I saw the man who, for 60 years, had written love letters to another woman while I managed the mundane miseries of our life. A strange calm settled over me. I had spent a lifetime being his shield. This time I would step aside and let the world see the real Arthur Evans. I subtly shifted my arm, breaking his grip. I completely changed my tone, painting a smile on my face as I turned back to the department head, Mr. Davies. Mr. Davies, I said, my voice sweet and reasonable. Arthur did tell me he didn't care about these external matters, but when he came home he seemed quite upset. I thought he really wanted this spot, so I came here for that reason. I let out a light, self-deprecating laugh. Looks like I misunderstood. You did the right thing. Opportunities should go to those who take the initiative to fight for them. The silence was profound. Everyone from Mr. Davies to the smirking Hank stared at me. Arthur's grip on my sleeve had gone slack, his face a comical mask of confusion. Mr. Davies was the first to recover, a broad, relieved smile spreading across his face. Well, I'll be. Didn't expect you to be so understanding, Clara. That's just perfect. The professor always said you are hard to deal with. But now I see you have to spend time with someone to really know what they're like. He turned to Arthur, clapping him on the shoulder with a knowing look. Arthur, if you want something, just say so. You act all lofty every day, so we assume you don't want anything. Naturally, we wouldn't arrange anything for you. Don't worry, there will be plenty of opportunities to study abroad. If it doesn't work out this time, I'll make sure you're first in line next time. Arthur's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He tried to form a sentence to explain, but what could he say? To protest would be to admit he was a hypocrite. In the end, he just gave an awkward, strangled smile. Clara, don't worry, Mr. Davies said to me as he prepared to leave. With you supporting the school's work like this, I'll be sure to spread the word about how virtuous and considerate you are. With that, he and the others left, their cheerful chatter echoing down the hall. Arthur and I were alone. The moment the others were out of sight, his placid expression shattered. His face darkened into a thundercloud. Clara, he seethed, his voice low and furious. Why would you say that? How could you tell them what we talk about at home? I looked at him, this man I had loved and served, and I felt nothing but a chilling clarity. I finally understood his game. He cared about everything. The promotions, the recognition, the opportunities. But he didn't want to dirty his hands. He would play the wounded, misunderstood scholar to me, knowing my protective instincts would flare up. He would push me into the fray and then have the gall to resent me for the methods I used to win his battles. My little performance today had not only cost him the spot he secretly coveted, but it had also peeled back a corner of the saintly facade he presented to the world. I had exposed the petty, calculating man hiding behind the mask of detachment. I smiled at him, a cold, sharp thing. Didn't you just tell me to stop making a scene and go home? I was only listening to you. Is that wrong? I tilted my head, feigning innocence. Besides, you've always said we walk the straight path and have nothing to hide from others. Unless, of course, your words aren't something you can repeat in public. He was speechless. I had never spoken to him like this before. I had always been the fiery one, yes, but my fire was always in service to him. This was a different kind of fire. One meant to consume, not warm. He stared at me, his jaw working soundlessly. After a long, tense moment, he shook his sleeves in a gesture of pure frustration. Unbelievable, he muttered and turned on his heel, striding away toward home without a backward glance. I watched him go, the cold diamond in my chest growing harder. This was only the beginning. The tigress was gone. In her place was something far more dangerous. A woman with nothing left to lose and everything to reveal. I walked home slowly, allowing the reality of my rebirth to settle deep into my bones. The world was the same modest university housing complex, the same rustling sycamore trees, but I was fundamentally altered. The meek, hopeful Clara who had lived here was a ghost, and I was her vengeful spirit. Our home was an old apartment allocated by the university. 2 bedrooms and a study, not large, but I had always kept it warm and tidy, a sanctuary from the world. As I pushed the door open, I heard the definitive click of the study door locking. Arthur's retreat. His fortress of solitude. Whenever he was unhappy, which was often, or after we quarreled, which was frequent, that's where he would go. In my previous life, I'd come to see it as a necessary pressure valve for his sensitive nature. Now I saw it for what it was. A petulant withdrawal, a passive-aggressive punishment that would only end when I swallowed my pride and apologized. In the past, I would have already been planning my conciliatory approach, maybe brewing his favorite tea. Now, I looked at the closed door and felt nothing but a profound weariness. Stay in there forever, I thought coldly. Spare me the performance. The front door opened again and my son Daniel came in, his school bag slung carelessly over one shoulder. He was 14, all lanky limbs and a burgeoning sense of teenage entitlement. My heart, which I thought had turned to stone, gave a painful, involuntary lurch. This was my boy, the child I had carried, nursed, and fiercely loved. But the memory of the man he would become, the one who would sigh and wish for a gentler mother at my funeral, lay between us like a shroud. He glanced at the closed study door and his young face immediately soured. "Mom," he said, his tone dripping with accusation, "what did you do to upset Dad again? You're always focused on those petty material things. Stop picking stupid fights with him over trivial stuff." The words, so similar to the ones I'd heard from his 50-year-old self, hit me like a physical slap. So his allegiance to his father, his disdain for me, had taken root this early. I had given up my own career at the textile factory to raise him, had supervised every homework assignment, had scrimped and saved to ensure he had every opportunity. And in his eyes I was just a nagging, materialistic shrew. I pressed on, a desperate, foolish part of me still hoping for a different response. "Daniel, aren't you even going to ask why we argued? Shouldn't you at least figure out who's right and who's wrong?" He rolled his eyes, a gesture of supreme teenage contempt. "Do I really need to ask? Dad's not the type to nitpick. It's you who's always looking for trouble. Without you stirring things up, we wouldn't have so many problems at home." He dropped his bag on the floor with a thud. "Mom, can't you try being a little gentler? Dad likes gentle women. It's completely normal he wouldn't like a tigress like you." The room seemed to tilt. Dad likes gentle women. How did a 14-year-old boy know what kind of women his father preferred? Unless he'd heard it from the source. My chest went cold. I stared at him, my voice dangerously level. "And how do you know your dad doesn't like me and prefers gentle women? Where did you hear that?" A flicker of guilt crossed his face, so fast I would have missed it if I weren't watching so closely. He looked away, shuffling his feet. "I guessed. Who would like someone as fierce as you? Of course he'd like gentle women." With that he turned quickly toward his bedroom. "I still have homework. Call me when dinner's ready." He was lying. I was his mother, I knew his tells. In the past I'd had to nag him relentlessly to do his homework. He'd never been this eager to shut himself away. The realization was a final icy douse of water, extinguishing the last ember of maternal hope. My son had long known about Arthur and Isabella. He had not only kept his father's secret but had been a willing accomplice, probably fantasizing about Isabella replacing me. The hurt was a sharp, clean cut, followed by a strange sense of relief. Good. Now I knew. There were no more illusions to shatter, no more bonds to hold me back. I could act without hesitation. I looked around the tidy living room at the home I had maintained with such dutiful care. The thought of cooking a meal for these two, the hypocritical husband and the disloyal son, who expected dinner to appear magically without ever lifting a finger, made me nauseous. Forget it. I walked into our bedroom and pulled a small suitcase from the closet. I packed a set of practical clothes, my personal documents, and the small box of jewelry that had been my mother's. I didn't need much. I was not running away from home. I was launching an escape. I needed an ally. I needed my best friend, Marianne Scott. Marianne had gone into the clothing business, something Arthur had always looked down upon as crass and unscholarly. But the truth was, in these booming 1980s, Marianne was making tens of thousands a year, while Arthur was supporting our whole family on a monthly salary of just a few dozen dollars. After our marriage, he had repeatedly tried to sour my friendship with her. "She's a bad influence, Clara," he'd say. "Her values are all about money. You'll lose your refinement." With housework and managing Arthur's career piling up, my contact with her had gradually faded. Just last year she had asked me to help with her business. I had been tempted, but with Arthur's vehement opposition I had refused. Now I worried she might have grown distant from me. But I couldn't think of anyone more suitable to turn to. I took a deep breath and headed for her boutique, a place called Scott's Trends. I had visited only a handful of times. The bell above the door jingled as I entered. The shop was a vibrant explosion of color and texture, a world away from the muted academic tones of my life. Marianne emerged from the back, her face breaking into a wide, genuine smile when she saw me. "Clara, my God, it's so good to see you." She enveloped me in a warm, perfumed hug. Then she noticed the suitcase in my hand. Her smile faded, replaced by concern. What's going on? I didn't mince words. The dam had broken. Marianne, I need your help. I plan to get a divorce. Instead of shock or pity, her face lit up with fierce joy. She even clapped her hands. Finally, you've come to your senses. That man never loved you, Clara. I've been wanting to tell you to stop being his doormat for years. She grabbed my hands, her eyes sparkling. So, how do you want me to help? Tears of relief pricked at my eyes. I had not completely failed. I still had a friend I could rely on. I need you to help me find a good divorce lawyer, I said, my voice steadying. Lend me a camera. And help me get in touch with a newspaper reporter. I took a deep breath. And, would you still be willing to hire me to work with you? Marianne agreed without a moment's hesitation. Of course. I'd be thrilled to have you. You have a better eye for fabric and cut than anyone I know. I hugged her in return, showing my first genuine smile since being reborn. It felt like stretching a muscle I hadn't used in decades. It felt good. At Marianne's warm invitation, I stayed at her apartment for 3 days, planning my strategy and steeling my resolve. On the 4th day I returned home. I deliberately chose a time when both Arthur and Daniel would be at work and school. The place was a mess. Dishes were piled in the sink and a layer of dust was already settling on the furniture. It was astonishing how quickly order had decayed without my constant, unseen labor. I went straight to Arthur's study. In the past, he'd always insisted that even between husband and wife, we had to respect each other's privacy. So, apart from cleaning, I had never stepped foot in there, never snooped. I had given him all the respect he demanded, and in return, he had kept a 60-year correspondence with his first love behind my back. Now that very habit of his expectation of my blind trust, made my task easy. It took me less than a minute to find the letters. They were sitting right in the top drawer of his desk, not even locked away. He was that arrogant, that sure of my devotion. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. So this was what Arthur relied on. He thought my love for him made me blind and stupid. I pulled out the bundle of envelopes, tied with a simple ribbon. My hands trembled slightly, not with heartbreak but with a cold, focused rage. Even though I'd already seen these letters once at their wedding in my previous life, looking at them now, holding the physical proof of his betrayal, made my stomach churn. The elegant script on the envelopes was Isabella's. I didn't need to read them all. A quick scan of a few was enough. They were full of longing, poetry, and tender inquiries about his life. Their life, the one he was supposedly trapped in with me. I worked quickly. I used the camera Marianne had lent me to photograph every page, every envelope with its postmark. The steady click-whir of the camera was a satisfying sound, a weapon being loaded. When I was done, I gathered the originals and placed them back in the drawer exactly as I had found them. The photos were my insurance. The originals were my bait. Then I sat down in Arthur's own chair, the letters in my lap, and waited for the 2 Evans men to come home. The stage was set. The confrontation was coming. And this time I was ready. The wait was strangely peaceful. Sitting in Arthur's sacred study, surrounded by the evidence of his duplicity, I felt a clarity I hadn't known in either of my lifetimes. The love that had once clouded my judgment was gone, burned away by the cold fire of truth. I was no longer Clara the wife, Clara the mother. I was Clara the avenger. At a little past 7 p.m., I heard the key turn in the front door. 2 sets of footsteps entered, one measured and weary, the other a clumsy adolescent shuffle. "I'm starving," Daniel's voice complained. "What's for dinner?" There was a moment of silence as they took in the unchanged mess and my absence from the kitchen. Then Arthur's voice, hard and cold, called out, "Clara? Are you here?" I didn't answer. I remained seated, the stack of letters a tangible weight on my lap. I heard them move through the living room, their confusion turning to irritation. Arthur appeared in the study doorway, his face like thunder. The moment he saw me sitting in his chair, his eyes widened in outrage. Then his gaze dropped to the bundle in my lap and all the color drained from his face. "So you do remember to come back," he spat, trying to reclaim the moral high ground through bluster. "Is this how a wife and mother should act? Disappearing without a word? Who knows where you've been messing around?" Daniel appeared behind him, his expression a perfect mimic of his father's disapproval. "Mom, why would you leave without telling us? We were starving that day because of you." "Whatever. Just go make dinner. I want sweet and sour ribs." His voice was full of blame, devoid of any concern for my well-being. The last fragile thread of my attachment to him snapped. I couldn't be bothered with pointless talk. I stood up, the letters in my hand, and simply threw them onto the table between us. They scattered, fanning out like a hand of damning cards. I may not be worthy, I said, my voice dangerously calm. But is a man who's been married over a decade and still writes to his first love every day really worthy of being a father and a husband? Arthur's face underwent a terrifying transformation. The serene, detached professor vanished, replaced by a cornered, furious animal. Clara, are you crazy? He roared, his voice cracking. Don't you understand what it means to respect someone's privacy? How could you read my letters? He lunged forward, trying to snatch them from the table. I was faster, sweeping them back into my grasp with ease. I sneered. And respecting you got me what? Over 10 years of you secretly contacting your first love. Maybe it's time we skip the respect. His anger boiled over. The facade was not just cracked, it was shattered. You crazy tigress, he shouted, his finger jabbing toward me. How could I ever like someone like you? Isabella and I just exchanged the occasional greeting. Purely innocent. And you can't let it go. The world is more open now. Divorce isn't rare. I've been responsible by putting up with you. You think I'm afraid to divorce you? At that moment, my son, my own flesh and blood, chimed in to take his father's side. Mom, stop it already and apologize to Dad. Dad and Aunt Isabella live far apart. They just write letters sometimes. Why do you have to be so petty? The more you act like this, the less Dad will like you. He crossed his arms, delivering his final, devastating blow. And right now you're living entirely off him. If you get divorced, where will you even go? I'm telling you now, I'm not going with you to suffer. Arthur immediately grew smug, his son's betrayal fueling his sense of righteousness. You hear that, Clara? I'm the one supporting you. Don't take your good fortune for granted. If you divorce me, you'll know what real hardship is. I looked at this father and son pair, united against me, and the last of my sentimentality evaporated. The anger that rose in my chest was not hot and messy but cold and sharp, a precision tool. I was a textile factory worker, I said, my voice low. After Daniel was born and there was no one to care for him, I quit my job. When he was older and I wanted to work again, you crushed my confidence, Arthur. You said that after years away I was out of touch and no company would hire me. I turned my gaze to Daniel. Yet the son I raised feels no gratitude. In his eyes, you are the one who supports the family, and I am just a useless woman who can't find a job. Suddenly it all felt so pointless. The charade was over. I looked at them with a terrifying calm. Since that's how it is, then let's get divorced. Arthur's eyes widened in disbelief. After a moment of stunned silence, he gave a cold, derisive laugh. So, you're the one asking for divorce. Don't regret it later. Whoever regrets it is a coward, I shot back. Tomorrow we'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau and get the divorce papers. Seeing I was resolute, Arthur's forehead bulged with rage. Unbelievable. Have you been fooling around outside? Is that where you got this nerve? The accusation was so typical, so pathetic that I didn't even think. My hand flew out and slapped him hard across the face. The sound was sharp and satisfying in the tense room. Arthur Evans, if you're going to accuse someone, you'd better have proof, I hissed. The proof of your affair is in my hands. Tell me, if I show these letters to everyone in the university compound, will your prestigious reputation as Professor Evans still hold up? Arthur's raised hand, ready to retaliate, froze in midair. He might have claimed that he and Isabella were purely platonic, but he knew, and I knew, the intimate contents of those letters were a professional death sentence. What do you want? He whispered, all the fight draining out of him, replaced by a frantic fear. What will it take for you to give them back? I lifted the letters slightly. The family's entire savings go to me, and I'll return the letters to you. Then I turned my gaze toward Daniel. He visibly tensed, his bravado vanishing. I'm not going with you, he said quickly, his voice defensive. So give up that idea. That was exactly the sentence I'd been waiting for. You heard him, I said to Arthur, my voice flat. If our son wants to be with you, then fine. I won't fight you for custody. I glanced around the room. As for this place, it was assigned to you by the university. I can't take it, and naturally I won't. Arthur's face flushed red with indignation. You're taking all the savings, Clara? You're being outrageous. That money is all from my hard work." Instead of getting angry, I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Oh, so Professor Evans, the man who claims to be above all worldly concerns, actually cares about money? I thought only small-minded people like me cared about such things." I let the silence hang for a moment. "Your choice is simple. Either give me the money and I'll return the letters, or don't, and watch your romantic escapades spread through the entire university and faculty housing." With that, I picked up my already packed suitcase, and wheeled it out of the home I had lived in for 15 years. I didn't look back. In the end, Arthur agreed. The savings amounted to only 1,200 yuan, scraped together over the years through my own obsessive frugality. He agreed not because the money was insignificant to him, but because his reputation was everything. He couldn't bear the thought of being exposed as a hypocrite and a philanderer. Outside the Civil Affairs Bureau, after the paperwork was finalized, the two of them stood together, a united front of hostility. "Clara, I hope you don't regret your decision today," Arthur said coldly. Daniel shook his head in theatrical disapproval. "Mom, I really don't understand how you could do this. You've just torn apart a perfectly good family." I looked at them, these two strangers who had shared my name and my home, and I felt nothing. "Don't worry," I said, my voice calm and final. "From now on, you walk your sunny road and I'll cross my narrow bridge. I won't bother either of you again." Then I turned and walked away, a cold smile on my lips. Sunny road. Arthur could keep dreaming. His sunny road, I knew, was about to be swallowed by a very long, very dark shadow. And I was the one who would ensure it. The weeks following the divorce were a period of intense and purposeful reconstruction. I moved into the small dorm room above Marianne's boutique. It was simple, just a bed, a desk, and a few toiletries, but it was mine. For the first time in my adult life, my space was not dictated by Arthur's preferences or Daniel's needs. The freedom was intoxicating. I threw myself into work with Marianne. My eye for detail, honed from years of managing a household on a shoestring budget, was a perfect asset for the clothing business. I understood fabric quality, stitching, and what styles would appeal to the burgeoning professional class of women. Marianne gave me responsibilities, trusted my judgment, and for the first time I was earning my own money. It wasn't much at first, but it was mine. Meanwhile, Arthur played the victim. In a time when divorce was still a scandal, he mastered the art of the insinuating complaint. I heard the whispers through mutual acquaintances. "You know how fierce she is. Our marriage was never good. For the sake of our child, I didn't want to be the one to betray our vows." But then she spent time with that friend of hers who went into business and came back asking for a divorce. Truly an unfortunate family. When Marianne heard this, she was furious and wanted to confront him publicly. I stopped her. "Let him talk," I said, sipping my tea calmly. "When God wants to destroy someone, he first makes them mad with arrogance. His words will only make the truth, when it comes out, that much more damning." A month later, just as in my previous life, Arthur married Isabella. The news didn't surprise me. Whether at 80 or 40, Arthur was equally impatient to be with her. But their wedding this time was far less lavish. Partly because of the more modest times, but mostly because I had taken all his savings. I heard through the grapevine that he'd had to borrow money for the event, promising to repay his colleagues with the cash gifts they would bring. Marianne and I got the invitation. It was a bold, almost insulting move. I saw it for what it was. Arthur's way of proving to himself and the world that he had moved on to a better, more refined life. "You're not actually going, are you?" Marianne asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Of course I am," I replied, a slow smile spreading across my face. I wouldn't miss it for the world. The day of the wedding, I dressed carefully. I chose a simple, well-tailored dress from the boutique, elegant but understated. I wanted to look like the wronged party, not the bitter ex-wife. In my bag I carried a thick stack of photocopies. I had also, through Marianne's connections, ensured a reporter from a local newspaper was in attendance. The wedding was held in a modest banquet hall. The air was thick with the scent of cheap flowers and anticipation. Arthur and Isabella stood at the door to greet guests, with two teenage boys behind them. One was Daniel, trying to look mature and solemn. The other, a lanky, shy-looking boy, must have been Isabella's son. Arthur looked elated, his face flushed with a pride and energy I hadn't seen in years. When he saw me, his smile widened into a condescending smirk. He was playing the magnanimous man. "Clara," he said, his voice oozing false warmth. I didn't expect you to really come. I'm starting a new life now, so I won't hold past grudges against you. We can still be friends, can't we? And if you want to see your son, you're always welcome. Daniel looked openly impatient. Who cares if she comes to see me? He muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. I have Aunt Isabella now. He's so gentle. Why would I want this tigress? Perhaps I'd grown used to it. The words barely registered. I felt strangely calm. Without giving Daniel another glance, I stepped into the banquet hall with Marianne by my side. The wedding soon began. The bride and groom took the stage, and Arthur, just like in my last life, began to profess his deep love for Isabella. Back then, he said, his voice dripping with false sentiment, Isabella and I were separated by a twist of fate. But even after 16 years, I never forgot her. Thankfully, heaven has eyes. We both divorced, and now we can be together again. He gazed at her with what looked like tears in his eyes. To be with someone whose heart and mind align with yours, it is the most beautiful thing in the world. But this time his heartfelt confession didn't land the way it had in my past life. Because this time I was still alive, sitting right there in the audience. As soon as he finished, every head in the room turned toward me. I kept my expression calm, a mask of dignified sorrow, though my heart was pounding with a fierce, cold satisfaction. What could be sweeter than a scumbag openly admitting to emotional infidelity in front of his jilted wife? Still, that wasn't enough. I needed to add fuel to the fire. I stood up. The room fell into a hushed silence. I reached into my bag and pulled out the thick stack of photocopies. Since Arthur has been thinking about his first love for 16 years, I said, my voice clear and carrying, I'm deeply touched as well. I'd like to provide everyone with a little more evidence of their great love. Then I tossed the papers into the air. They fluttered down like poisonous snow. People love gossip. The guests immediately surged forward, snatching up the copies, their eyes wide with scandalized delight. As you can see, I continued, my tone conversational, over the 16 years of our marriage, Arthur wrote to Isabella at least twice a month. In those letters they poured out their feelings, expressing tender affection. I paused for effect, letting the murmurs grow. He also sent her financial support many times and even used work trips as an excuse to visit her in person. When I learned about their relationship, I was moved. So, I divorced him to fulfill their love. I turned my gaze to Daniel, who had gone pale. My son also prefers a gentle stepmother like Isabella. Even knowing his father had been writing to his first love all along, he chose to hide it from me. Naturally, I respected his wishes and let him stay with his father. My words sounded magnanimous, but every syllable dripped with sarcasm. The crowd erupted. So, it wasn't just in his heart. They've been in contact all this time. And he's helped raise her kid. Wouldn't be surprising if they'd slept together too. And that son of his, what a little fool, helping his dad hide the affair. All this time, Professor Evans's been preaching morality, and he's actually this kind of man. Shameless. Arthur's face grew darker by the second, his anger boiling over. Clara, he roared, pointing a shaking finger at me. You're breaking your word. You promised that if I gave you the savings, you'd return the letters. Before he could finish his self-incriminating sentence, Isabella tugged frantically at his sleeve. Realization dawned on his face, followed by pure horror. He had just publicly confirmed the letters were real. I gave him a small, icy smile. I promised to give back the originals. I never said I didn't take photos or make copies, and I certainly never promised not to tell people. Arthur looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. He pointed at me, sputtering with incoherent rage. But Isabella, ever the strategist, chose that moment to enact her escape. In a sudden show of fragility, she let out a delicate moan and collapsed to the floor in a dead faint. Naturally, saving the fainting bride took priority. The scene descended into chaos as people rushed to her side. My eyesight had always been sharp, and I had caught the way her eyelids had twitched before she fell. She was faking it. A brilliant, if cowardly, tactical retreat. As the crowd carried her out, I saw the newspaper reporter scribbling furiously in his notepad, a look of sheer glee on his face. I smiled. The spectacle was complete. Overnight, Arthur Evans's reputation was ruined. The story hit the press the next day, and the university, a place that prized propriety, was swift to act. He was reassigned to a minor administrative position with no teaching duties, and all his research projects were handed over to others. The man who lived for academic recognition was now a paper-pushing pariah. Many who had attended the wedding, disgusted by his behavior, demanded their cash gifts back. Arthur, who was counting on that money to cover his debts, refused. The man who had once treated money like dirt was now having public shouting matches with colleagues over it. His relationships crumbled completely. When Marianne brought me the news, she laughed until she cried. "I used to worry you'd let him off too easily," she gasped, "but you really have a way with this. Finally, I've seen a cheating man get his payback." I smiled faintly, looking out the window of our growing boutique. "This," I said softly, "still isn't enough." Arthur had lost his reputation and his career. But he still had his new wife and his comfortable illusions. I would wait. Arrogant men like Arthur Evans never know when to stop digging. And when he started digging his own grave, I would be there, ready to give him a final push. Life settled into a new, productive rhythm. The business with Marianne flourished. My understanding of logistics and my newfound confidence in dealing with suppliers helped us expand. We moved from a single boutique to a small warehouse, supplying several other stores in the city. The seed money from the divorce, which I had taken mostly out of spite, became a genuine investment in our future. I was no longer just an employee, I was a partner. The quiet satisfaction of building something for myself was a balm on the old wounds. I rarely thought of Arthur or Daniel, but when I did, it was with a detached curiosity, like observing a specimen under glass. That curiosity was satisfied 3 months later when Daniel suddenly showed up at the warehouse. He was a pitiful sight. The clothes he wore were the same ones I had bought him the previous year, now grubby and too tight. He had lost weight and his hair was an unkempt mess. It was clear no one was taking care of him. "Mom," he whined, his voice a familiar blend of complaint and entitlement. "I haven't eaten meat in almost a month. Dad only trusts my stepmom and the kid she brought with her. He doesn't care about me at all. Can't you go talk to him?" He then poured out a story that was both predictable and pathetic. After marrying Isabella, Arthur had handed over his entire salary to her, not keeping a cent for himself. She controlled all the household finances. "At first it was great," Daniel admitted, a flicker of his old naivety in his eyes. "Aunt Isabella said children should grow up freely, so she basically left me alone. I could play as long as I wanted, skip tutoring if I felt like it." But his tone quickly soured. But the very next day she took her son Leo to those same tutoring classes. When I asked her why, she said, "The money's already paid. If he doesn't go, it's a waste." It got worse. Gradually, even toys and the meat on the table were taken away and given to Leo. "Because his little brother's health isn't good," Daniel mimicked Isabella's simpering tone. Whenever he refused, Isabella would cry to Arthur. "And Dad," Daniel said, his voice thick with betrayal, "he just frowns and says, 'Daniel, you're the older brother. Be kind to your younger brother. Don't be petty like your mother.'" Even Arthur had begun to notice the favoritism. Once he saw nearly all the meat from a dish going into Leo's bowl, with Daniel getting only a couple of pieces and Arthur himself getting none. He actually frowned and said, "Can't you just buy a little more? This isn't enough for 2 kids, let alone us," Daniel recounted. Isabella's response was a masterclass in manipulation. She immediately turned on the tears. "Your salary is barely enough as it is," she'd wailed. "How can we afford so much meat and fruit and still send both kids to extracurricular classes?" "I'd love to, but unless you can bring in more money, how is that possible?" The jab had hit Arthur's sore spot, his wounded pride and his reduced income, and he had fallen silent. Daniel's life as a cared-for son was over. I wasn't surprised. Arthur's salary had never been high, and with his lofty pride he had no other source of income. That's exactly why I'd once scrimped and saved, turning every penny twice to keep our family afloat. He had never had to worry about money. Now with Isabella, a woman who only knew romance and daydreams, running the household and raising 2 teenage boys, things were bound to turn out this way. Money was running short and her loyalties were clearly to her own blood. I looked at my son, crying his eyes out, and felt that familiar, strange calm. Had he truly realized he was wrong and understood my intentions from the past? I doubted it. More likely he was just upset at being mistreated and had come looking for my help as a last resort. Even now he hadn't said a word about wanting to live with me. So he was my son. I couldn't ignore him completely. I took him back to my small dorm room. I'm divorced from your dad now, I told him plainly. I can't manage what goes on in your house, but if you want you can come live here. I'll help you apply for a dorm room at your school. Daniel glanced around the Spartan room, his nose wrinkling in disdain. He compared it to the university apartment, however chaotic, that he was used to. No, he said quickly, shaking his head. I'll go back and talk to Dad. He's just been tricked by my stepmom for now. With that he bolted out the door back to the devil he knew. I watched his retreating back, the last ember of maternal feeling finally dying out. Clearly in his heart there was no real mother-son bond. Everything for him came down to self-interest and comfort. 2 months later the Evans family's life seemed to have miraculously turned around. While delivering a new shipment of autumn wear to a upscale department store with Marianne, I spotted the 4 of them. They were dressed to the nines, shopping for designer brands, their arms laden with shopping bags. I froze for a moment. With Arthur's diminished salary, this kind of spending was something he couldn't afford in 100 years. Arthur spotted me from a distance. His face, which had been tense the last time I saw him, was now lit with smug satisfaction, especially when he saw me dressed in practical work clothes, sweating from carrying boxes. He stepped forward, Isabella clinging to his arm, a condescending smile plastered on his face. Clara, we were husband and wife for so many years. If you're in trouble, tell me. I can lend you money. No need to do such heavy labor. Isabella, draped in a new silk dress, added warmly, Clara, I owe my good life today to you, stepping aside. If you ever need help, you must tell us. I turned to look at Daniel. He pretended not to see me, utterly engrossed in examining an expensive watch in a display case. He was nothing like the bedraggled, hungry boy who had come to me before. As expected, he only acknowledged me when I was useful to him. When I wasn't, he wished I would disappear. I almost laughed. An idea began to form. Actually, I said slowly, injecting a note of manufactured desperation into my voice. Things are a bit tight for me right now. A friend's factory needs 100,000 yuan in investment. Since you're both doing so well, I wonder if you could lend it to me. The moment the number left my lips, Arthur's face turned a spectacular shade of crimson. The smugness evaporated, replaced by sheer panic and rage. Clara, all this time and you're still so shameless, he snapped. He turned to his family. Let's go. Some people aren't worth our sympathy. The 4 of them scurried away like startled cockroaches. As they turned the corner, Isabella shot me a triumphant look. Daniel, perhaps feeling a flicker of guilt, avoided looking at me altogether. After they were gone, I patted Marianne on the back. Can you find a way to investigate them? I asked. I'm sure something's off. 3 days later the results came in. The news was so shocking it almost made me drop my teacup. Arthur had been making promotional appearances for a fake medicine company. I was genuinely surprised. Arthur had always prided himself on his aloof, principled nature. When he worked on research projects, he would apply for the smallest possible budget, to the point where no graduate students wanted to join his team. He considered commercial work beneath him. But once I saw who had arranged it, Isabella, I understood. In front of her, Arthur abandoned every principle he ever had. The main reason, of course, was money. Their funds had clearly run out, and Isabella, used to a certain comfort, had found a way to generate income. She had gotten in touch with a fake pharmaceutical company. Although Arthur had been reassigned to an administrative role, he still held the title of professor in a university's school of biomedicine. That title was enough to impress and deceive the company's target demographic: elderly men and women. At first, according to Marianne's source, Arthur had hesitated. How could I lie for money? He had reportedly said. But after receiving a 1,000 yuan gift from the company, along with smooth assurances that the pills were just harmless vitamins, his scruples had vanished. He had already made over a dozen appearances for them and even filmed television advertisements. He had pocketed 30,000 to 40,000 yuan. A fortune in those days. No wonder that family had been walking around so high and mighty. But when I looked at the transcripts of what Arthur had said during those promotional events, my blood ran cold. He wasn't just vaguely endorsing a product. He was making specific, outrageous claims. This formulation can cure all manner of age-related ailments, he declared to a room of hopeful seniors. It doesn't just treat symptoms. It reverses the aging process at a cellular level. He was cheating elderly people out of their life savings, their coffin money. He was using his ravaged but still present academic credibility to sell them false hope. Arthur's bottom line was far lower than I had ever imagined. I must have been utterly blind to have once believed all his talk about being above worldly concerns. A cold fury settled in my heart. This was no longer just about personal revenge. This was about justice. Whether for one reason or the other, my path was clear. I went straight to the Public Security Bureau and reported the fake medicine company, providing them with all the evidence Marianne had gathered. At that time, the authorities were cracking down hard on fraud and public safety violations. They took my case very seriously. 3 days later, during one of the company's promotional meetings in a rented hotel ballroom, the police raided the event. They arrested everyone involved on the spot. Arthur Evans, professor of biomedicine, was among them. The news of Arthur's arrest spread through the university like wildfire. This wasn't just a personal scandal anymore. It was a criminal one. The university administration, which had already been humiliated by the wedding fiasco, now faced a full-blown crisis. A professor, one of their own, was involved in a scheme that preyed on the city's most vulnerable. I heard the details from Marianne, who had a friend in the Public Security Bureau. During the raid, Arthur had panicked. Realizing he couldn't escape, he had tried to hide his face, burying his head in his hands like a child. Even during the initial questioning, he refused to state his name or position, a pathetic attempt to preserve some shred of dignity. It didn't last long. The police simply asked a few of the elderly attendees, who were only too happy to identify the distinguished Professor Evans, who had so convincingly promised them a new lease on life. The looks the officers gave him after that were not just of contempt, but of profound disgust. A man with such high education, a supposed role model, sinking to this level for money was seen as the lowest form of betrayal. The police formally notified the university. The school's decision was swift and merciless. They couldn't afford the stain on their reputation. Arthur Evans was not just reassigned, he was summarily expelled. His career, the thing he had valued above all else, above his wife, above his son, above his own integrity, was over. The trial was a swift affair. The evidence was overwhelming. I attended the sentencing, sitting in the back of the public gallery. Arthur was led in, his beard unkempt, his shoulders slumped. His head hung so low his chin nearly touched his chest. There was no trace left of the aloof, refined man who had once seemed as serene as a chrysanthemum. This was a broken, defeated man, stripped of his titles, his pride, and his freedom. In the end, he was convicted of fraud. The sentence was 4 years in prison. It wasn't a long term, but for someone as obsessed with status and face as Arthur, it was a devastating, soul-crushing blow. As the judge read the verdict, he didn't look up. He simply allowed himself to be led away, a shell of his former self. As for me, because I had provided the tip that led to the dismantling of a company that had scammed countless ordinary people out of their life savings, I was quietly honored by the authorities. There was no ceremony, but a letter of commendation arrived, naming me a model citizen. The irony was so thick I could taste it. The tigress was a hero, the saint was a convict. On the day Arthur was sent to prison, Daniel came to see me again. This time there was no whining, no blame. He simply dropped to his knees on the rough concrete floor of the warehouse and begged, "Mom, please help me. Let me stay with you. I really know I was wrong. Mom, you can't just leave me like this." I looked down at him, this young man who was the physical reminder of my past life. I couldn't tell anymore whether he was truly remorseful or just switching allegiance to whoever was left standing. His father was in jail, his stepmother was undoubtedly making new plans that didn't include him, and he was adrift. I felt a sigh escape me, not of sadness but of finality. The well of maternal feeling was dry. All that was left was a sense of residual responsibility. "You're already 15. I said, my voice firm but not unkind. "I'll arrange for you to board at school. I'll send you a monthly allowance to cover average living expenses. I'll support you until you're an adult. And if you get into college, I'll pay for your studies." I paused, letting the words sink in. "But after everything that's happened, it's time you learn to grow up, Daniel. This is the extent of my help." He opened his mouth, perhaps to plead for more, to ask to live with me, but he saw the unyielding resolve in my eyes. In the end, he stayed silent. He just bowed his head and said softly, "I understand." It was the most mature interaction we had ever had. With Arthur in prison and Daniel provided for, A strange quiet settled over my life. The frantic energy of revenge and survival eased. I focused entirely on the business. Marianne and I were a formidable team. My head for numbers and organization complemented her flair for design and sales. We began to look beyond our city, establishing supply chains to the north and south. Scott and Evans Apparel started to become a known name, synonymous with quality and modern style for the working woman. I thought of Arthur sometimes in his cell. I wondered if he ever thought of me, if he ever connected the dots from my sudden change at the university to his public shaming at the wedding to his final downfall with the fake medicine company. I doubted it. Men like Arthur never see their own role in their destruction. They are always the victims of circumstance, of a cruel world, of a shrewish wife. I didn't care. My life was full and purposeful. The ghost of Clara Evans had been laid to rest. In her place was a successful businesswoman, a partner, a woman who had carved out her own destiny from the ruins of a lie. I assumed that was the end of the Arthur Evans chapter of my life. I was wrong. His story had one final tragic act to play. 4 years passed. The world outside changed and so did I. Our clothing business, Scott and Evans, had become one of the leading names in the regional market. We had a proper office, a staff of 20, and our designs were being featured in national magazines. The small dorm room was replaced by a comfortable apartment of my own. The money I earned was mine, the peace I enjoyed was mine, the future I was building was mine. Daniel, true to my word, had boarded at school. I sent the allowance every month, a transaction that was clinical and devoid of sentiment. He finished high school and, to my slight surprise, was admitted to a decent university in another province. I paid the tuition. We exchanged brief, necessary letters about logistics. There was no warmth, but there was also no animosity. It was a ceasefire brokered by distance and necessity. I heard snippets about Arthur's release from prison. He was a ghost in his own life. Expelled from the university, he had lost his assigned housing. He had nowhere to go and no one to turn to. His reputation ensured that no other academic institution would touch him, and his age and pride prevented him from finding any other meaningful work. It was about 6 months after his release that I received the news. Arthur had been sent back to prison. This time it was for manslaughter. The story, when I pieced it together from the newspaper reports and hushed conversations, was so sordid it was almost Shakespearean in its tragedy. After his release, Arthur had gone looking for Isabella. He still saw her as his soulmate, the great love for whom he had sacrificed everything. He eventually tracked her down to a rundown part of the city. He found his once pure and untouchable first love living with a middle-aged migrant worker, a coarse, rough-mannered man who worked in construction. The scene he stumbled upon was the final demolition of his illusions. Isabella was no delicate flower. She was engaged in a screaming match with a neighbor over a few pennies, her hair unkempt, her face contorted into a mask of rage. She looked every bit the street market shrew. Anne at her side, the man she was with, behaved with a possessiveness that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. Arthur snapped. All the pain, the humiliation, the loss. It boiled over into a blind, uncontrollable rage. He rushed forward shouting, I went to prison for you. I ruined my life for you. And you dare do this to me. Isabella, shocked to see him out of prison, was initially frightened. But with the burly man beside her, her fear quickly turned to scorn. And whose fault is it? She shrieked back. You're useless. You couldn't even provide. Look at you. A convict, a beggar. The argument escalated, a torrent of venom and recrimination. The man she was with, seeing the situation spiraling, decided this was not his fight. The moment real trouble came, he turned and bolted, leaving Isabella to face Arthur's fury alone. Unfortunately for her, the spot where they were fighting was a shoddily maintained alleyway, littered with construction debris. As they struggled, Arthur shoved her. Isabella, caught off balance, fell backward. There was an exposed piece of rusty steel rebar jutting from a broken concrete block. It struck a vital spot. She died almost instantly. Arthur was arrested on the spot, covered in her blood, his mind shattered. He was later convicted of accidental homicide. This time the sentence was not a few years. It was life. When Marianne told me the final grim details, we sat in silence for a long time. The office was bright and modern, a world away from that dirty alley. He brought it on himself, I said finally, my voice quiet. It wasn't a statement of vengeance, but a simple, stark conclusion. Every choice he had made, the secret letters, the hypocrisy, the fraud, the blind obsession, had led him step by step to that moment. There was no satisfaction in it, only a profound, weary sadness for the waste of it all. The serene, detached professor had ended his days as a violent convict, his great love story culminating in a squalid, meaningless death. I thought of the man I had married 60 years ago in another life. I thought of the son we had raised. I thought of the home I had built. It all felt like a story about someone else, a sad and cautionary tale from a forgotten book. I turned my attention back to the fabric samples on my desk, to the order forms that needed signing. The past was a closed door. The future was a blank page, and I was determined to fill it with color, success, and a peace I had earned on my own terms. Another decade slipped by, marked not by personal drama, but by professional milestones. The late 1990s brought new opportunities, and Scott and Evans Apparel was perfectly positioned to seize them. We embraced new fabrics, bolder designs, and eventually opened our own flagship store in the heart of the city. Marianne handled the creative vision and I managed the business engine. We were a perfect partnership, built on trust, respect, and a shared history of overcoming adversity. Daniel graduated from university and found a job as a mid-level manager in a state-owned enterprise in a distant city. Our communication remained infrequent and functional. He had learned, I suppose, that the bank of maternal indulgence was permanently closed. He was self-sufficient, and for that I was glad. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that he had married, but I did not receive an invitation. I sent a modest financial gift through a bank transfer, a final discharge of my duty. He acknowledged it with a brief, formal note. It was the closure we both needed. I never remarried. I had no desire to. The experience of marriage had been, for me, a lesson in subjugation and deception. The freedom I had found in my second life was too precious to compromise. I had friends, I had my work, and I had the deep, abiding satisfaction of self-reliance. I took trips with Marianne, learned to paint, and even audited a few literature classes at the university. Not for a degree, but for the pure joy of learning, something I had never been able to do when my education was seen only as a precursor to being a good wife. One bright autumn afternoon, I was in my office on the top floor of our flagship store. The sun streamed in through the large windows, illuminating the sleek, modern furniture and the vibrant boards displaying our latest collection. I was reviewing the quarterly financial reports, a sense of quiet accomplishment settling over me. The numbers were strong. We had done it. We had built an empire from a single boutique. My secretary's voice came over the intercom. "Ms. Evans, there's a Mr. Davies here to see you. He says he's an old friend." The name took a moment to register. Mr. Davies. The department head from the university, the one who had been so relieved by my understanding attitude all those years ago. "Send him in," I said, curious. He entered, an old man now, leaning on a cane. He looked around the office, his eyes wide with astonishment. "Clara Evans," he said, his voice filled with a kind of awe. "I heard you had done well for yourself, but this is remarkable." "Thank you, Mr. Davies," I said, gesturing for him to sit. "It's been a long time." We made small talk about the old days, carefully avoiding the minefield of the past. He had retired years ago. He spoke of other colleagues, some who had passed, some who had moved away. Finally, he cleared his throat, his expression turning somber. "I don't know if you've heard," he said, "but Arthur passed away last week. In prison." I had not heard. The news landed not with a shock, but with a soft, final thud, like the last page of a long-finished book. "I see," I said, my voice even. "It was illness," Mr. Davies continued. "They said he was very quiet at the end. He had no visitors. Daniel made the arrangements for the cremation. It was all very simple." I nodded. A simple end for a man whose life had become a complex web of his own making. No poetry, no grand declarations of love, just a quiet, lonely death. "Thank you for telling me," I said. He looked at me, a strange mix of pity and respect in his eyes. "You know, Claire, back then, we all felt so sorry for Arthur. We thought he was trapped with a difficult woman." He shook his head, a faint blush of shame on his wrinkled cheeks. "We were fools. We didn't see what was really happening. We didn't see the strength it took for you to do what you did. To walk away. To build all this. He gestured around the office. You proved everyone wrong. I smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile. I wasn't trying to prove anyone wrong, Mr. Davies. I was just trying to save myself. After he left, I stood by the window looking down at the bustling city below. The streets were filled with people, each with their own struggles, their own secrets, their own journeys. I thought of Arthur, of the twisted path his life had taken. I felt a pang of sorrow, not for the man he became, but for the tragic waste of it all. He could have had a good life, a simple, honest life, if only he had been able to value what was in front of him. But his choices were his own, just as mine were my own. I had spent my first life building a cage for myself, believing it was a palace. I had spent my second life breaking free and forging a destiny I could be proud of. The ghost of the bitter, betrayed wife was gone. The uncertainty of the reborn avenger was gone. All that remained was Clara Evans, business owner, partner, and a woman who had learned, finally, to live for herself. The sun was warm on my face. How wonderful it was, I thought, to truly understand that good and evil always come full circle. The tigress was a myth, a story told by a man to hide his own weakness. The real woman had not been fierce but resilient. Not hard but unbreakable. In this life I had indeed lived brilliantly. And the best part was the story was far from over. The end.
George, I've got good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear first? I put down my paintbrush and looked at my friend Frank. He stood at the studio door with a mysterious air, his face a mix of nervousness and excitement. Let's start with the bad news. After all, I've gotten used to it these past 3 years. Your painting, Eternity, just sold for a sky-high price. Over $6 million. I frowned. How is that bad news? Frank chuckled. Because it's actually part of the good news. The bad news is, buddy, you might need to see a psychiatrist. What do you mean? A woman who looks exactly like Mary showed up at your art exhibition. I almost thought I was seeing a ghost. The paintbrush slipped from my hand and fell to the floor, splattering paint across the unfinished canvas. Mary, my late wife, died 3 years ago after accidentally falling off a cliff. I watched with my own eyes as her body was pulled from the water. In that moment, my world completely collapsed. Stop joking around, Frank. Why would I lie to you? She even left this. Frank handed me a note, with an address and a time written on it. My hand trembled slightly. The handwriting was exactly the same as Mary's. That night, I waited until midnight at the designated cafe. Just as I was about to leave, a familiar figure appeared at the door. Mary? No, it couldn't be her. But every gesture of that woman, from the tips of her hair to her fingertips, was a shadow of Mary. George, it's been a long time. She sat across from me, and the familiar voice nearly made my heart stop. Who are you? I struggled to remain calm. I'm Mary, your wife. She smiled and reached out her hand. There was a scar on her palm, the mark Mary got when she accidentally cut herself on glass at 15. Impossible. Mary is already dead. She laughed softly. That was just an accident. I fell off the cliff and was saved by a reclusive old doctor. I lost my memory from the injuries and only recently remembered everything. As she spoke, tears began to fall, an expression I knew all too well, the look Mary wore whenever she felt wronged. I know it's hard to believe, but I really am Mary. I couldn't believe my eyes. The shade of lipstick Mary loved most, the faint little mole beneath her left ear, the unconscious habit of rubbing her ring while speaking. Everything was so familiar. Are you really Mary? She nodded and took a small box out of her bag. This is the proof. Inside the box was the first piece of jewelry Mary ever designed. A sapphire ring, the only one of its kind, never mass-produced. I brought it with me that day because I wanted to surprise you. I suddenly stood up and pulled her into my arms. 3 years of longing surged over me like a tide. I held her tightly, afraid that if I let go, she would disappear again. On the way home, she told me about her experiences over the past 3 years. She was rescued by an old doctor in the mountains, lost her memory due to a severe head injury, and lived in a remote mountain village for more than 2 years. It wasn't until she happened to see a poster for my art exhibition that her memory gradually returned. The next day, I took her to see Frank. Oh my God, it really is you, Mary. Frank stared in astonishment, eyes wide. Frank, it's been a long time. She greeted him with a smile, exactly as I remembered. Frank pulled me aside and whispered, Man, this is unbelievable, but I really believe it's her. Who else but Mary could call me by my childhood nickname so accurately? That was something only the two of you knew. A week later, Mary officially returned. We held a small welcome party for her. Her mother was so overwhelmed that she fainted, and when she woke up, she clung to her daughter and refused to let go. But that night, I noticed the first sign that something was off. Mary never ate mangoes because she was severely allergic. Yet the returned Mary absent-mindedly tasted a mango dessert and was perfectly fine. "Aren't you allergic to mangoes?" I asked. She paused for a moment, then quickly laughed and said, "Oh, that old Chinese doctor cured my allergy. He's really amazing." I nodded, but in my heart, I marked the first question mark. Is this really my wife? A month passed quickly, and Mary blended perfectly into our lives. She knew the location of every item in the house, remembered our shared memories, and could even accurately name friends we hadn't contacted in years. But those subtle feelings of discord kept growing. For example, the real Mary liked to listen to classical music, especially Debussy, while designing jewelry. But she would always unconsciously hum along to pop songs. Mary always habitually used her left hand to hold chopsticks, even though she knew it was wrong. She just couldn't change. But she was a standard right-handed user. The most obvious difference appeared that night when I accidentally caught her smoking in the bedroom. The real Mary hated the smell of smoke. Even when I came home from social events with a faint scent of cigarettes, she would frown. "When did you start smoking?" I stood at the doorway, my voice soft. She was clearly startled, hastily snuffing out the cigarette. This is a herbal cigarette for treating insomnia, prescribed by an old Chinese doctor." I nodded, not pressing further, but the doubts in my heart only grew deeper. The next day, I went to find Frank. "Help me check if, in the past 3 years, plastic surgery technology has advanced enough to achieve this level." Frank's eyes widened. "You mean, she's not Mary?" "I'm not sure, but there are always some things that don't add up." 2 days later, Frank brought news. High-end plastic surgery can make faces look similar, but it can't replicate the exact placement of scars or moles. And there's a limit to how well someone can imitate a voice. What if it was a twin? Frank shook his head. "Mary is an only child. We all know that." I decided not to show my feelings for now and to keep observing. A week later, Mary's mother came to my house with astonishing news. "George, Mary is going to have a baby," my mother-in-law told me excitedly. I stood there stunned. Before we got married, Mary had been diagnosed with uterine hypoplasia. The doctor had made it clear she could never get pregnant. This was our shared secret. Not even my mother-in-law knew. How do you know that?" I managed to ask. "Mary told me this morning. She said she already had a checkup. It's been 2 months. My mother-in-law happily grabbed my hand. "It's a blessing from above. Mary survived death, and now she can bring us new life." My heart sank to the bottom. This absolutely could not be Mary. That night, I dug out the hospital's diagnosis certificate in my study, which clearly stated the condition of Mary's uterus. But when I wanted to talk to Mary about it, I found her in the bedroom, excitedly discussing the decoration of the nursery with my mother-in-law. "Mary, could you come here for a moment?" I called her calmly. She followed me into the study, still wearing a blissful smile on her face. "Did you forget about this?" I handed her the diagnosis certificate. She took it and glanced at it, her face instantly turning pale. "George, I can explain." "Explain what?" "Explain that you're not Mary at all." Mother-in-law heard the commotion and walked in. "What's going on with you two?" "Mom, take a look at this." I handed her the proof. My mother-in-law read it, then looked at Mary in astonishment. "What's going on?" "Mary, you can't have children." "Of course she can," I sneered, "because she's not Mary at all." My mother-in-law's face changed dramatically. "What nonsense are you talking about?" "I can explain." She hurriedly grabbed my mother-in-law's hand. "That old Chinese doctor not only saved my life, but also cured my uterine problem. It's a miracle, truly." My mother-in-law looked at me, then at her, hesitating. "George, you're being too paranoid." My mother-in-law finally took her daughter's side. "Mary has come back with great difficulty. You should cherish her, not doubt her." "Yes, George, I know this is hard to accept, but miracles do happen." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Haven't we always wanted a child? Now we can finally have our own baby." I looked at her face, identical to Mary's, yet I became more certain in my heart. This woman was not my wife. "All right, I believe you." I smiled, deciding to go along with their story for now. Let's wait together for this miracle to happen. That night, I secretly contacted a private detective. My mother-in-law gladly accepted her daughter's explanation, even suggesting she move in with us to take care of Mary during her pregnancy. Outwardly, I agreed, but inside I grew even more wary. This was no coincidence. There had to be some kind of plot. Mom, haven't you always lived in Haicheng? Won't it be hard to get used to living here? I probed cautiously. For my grandson, I'm willing to endure any inconvenience, my mother-in-law said firmly. I noticed a fleeting unnatural expression on Mary's face. Could the truth be connected to my mother-in-law? On the third day after my mother-in-law moved in, I discovered more suspicious details. For example, the real Mary never drank coffee, but she and my mother-in-law often enjoyed it together. Also, Mary's favorite movie was Roman Holiday, but she claimed to prefer Titanic. The strangest thing is, Mary used to despise her cousin Tom when she was alive, but now he visits frequently and chats and laughs with Mary as if they're old friends. I told Frank about these discoveries. Buddy, things are getting more and more suspicious, Frank frowned. Are you sure you want to keep going like this? Why not just expose her directly? It's not the right time yet. I want to find out what they're really after. The private detective's investigation also made progress. The so-called old Chinese doctor who had saved Mary did not exist at all, and Mary's whereabouts over the past 3 years were completely untraceable. More importantly, the private detective uncovered a shocking fact during the investigation. Mary's cousin Tom was deeply in debt from gambling, and the painting Eternity under my name, worth over $6 million, was his only hope for quick cash. They're after your painting, the private detective asserted, and this fake Mary is likely a professional identity fraudster, hired to win your trust. I took a deep breath and decided to take the initiative. That afternoon, I pretended to go out, but secretly returned home and hid in the study. Sure enough, Mary and her cousin Tom were whispering to each other in the living room. It's taking too long, Tom said irritably. How much longer until he sells the painting? Don't worry, she soothed him. I'm already pregnant, and now he completely believes I'm Mary. In a little while, I'll say I want to move to a better neighborhood for the sake of the baby, and then we'll naturally need to sell the painting to raise money. You're really pregnant? That wasn't part of the plan. It was an accident, but it works to our advantage. George wants a child so badly. Does Annie know the truth? She only knows we're trying to scam money, not the specific plan. But she hates George, thinks he caused her daughter's death, so she's more than happy to help. I clenched my fists. So my mother-in-law had always believed that Mary's accident was somehow my fault. In fact, we did argue over something trivial that day, and Mary stormed out in anger. I didn't try to stop her. But I never imagined it would be the last time I'd see her. You don't actually have feelings for George, do you? Tom suddenly asked. She was silent for a moment. It's just part of the job. Besides, I owe you, and I won't go back on my word. Good then. Don't forget how we're splitting the money once we get it. Their conversation confirmed my suspicions. This was all an elaborate scheme, with my eternity as the target. In the days that followed, I pretended everything was normal while secretly making preparations. I contacted the police, arranged for evidence-gathering equipment, and found the last piece Mary had left before she died, a silver necklace that had never been made public, engraved with an anniversary date only the two of us knew. 2 weeks later, my art exhibition was held as scheduled. As planned, Mary brought up the idea of moving, hinting that I could sell Eternity. I pretended to agree and said I would auction the painting on the last day of the exhibition. This is a surprise I prepared for you, I said on the eve of the exhibition, taking out a delicate box. To celebrate the new life we're about to begin. She opened the box in surprise, and inside was the silver necklace. It's beautiful, thank you. She smiled as she prepared to put it on. Wait, I stopped her. Aren't you going to look at the engraving on the back? She turned the necklace over, and her face suddenly went pale. What's wrong? Don't you like it? I asked, feigning ignorance. No, I really like it. It's just... I'm a bit moved. She forced a smile, but didn't know how to explain that she couldn't recognize the significance of that date. See you tomorrow. Get some good rest, and don't forget to wear this necklace. I kissed her forehead and whispered in her ear. After all, this is your final design. Her body visibly stiffened for a moment, but she kept smiling. Of course, I cherish it very much. Tomorrow, the truth will come to light. On the day of the exhibition, the place was packed with people. My painting, Eternity, was displayed in the most prominent spot, right next to the last batch of jewelry designs Mary had created before her death. Mary held my arm, flawlessly playing the role of my wife as always. She had even gone out of her way to wear Mary's favorite white dress and the silver necklace I had given her last night. My mother-in-law and Tom were there too. The three of them exchanged glances from time to time, clearly waiting for the perfect moment. Frank appeared as planned, pretending to be extremely interested in eternity and asking me about the auction details. The auction will begin promptly at 4 in the afternoon, I replied with a smile. This painting means a great deal to me, and I hope it finds someone who truly appreciates it. Mary immediately chimed in. Yes, although it's hard to part with it, this is a necessary decision for our future. I noticed she glanced at Tom, who gave a barely perceptible nod. At 3:30 in the afternoon, the projector in the center of the exhibition hall lit up. This was the special segment I had arranged. Ladies and gentlemen, I stood in front of eternity. Before the auction begins, I'd like to share a little story about this painting. Mary's photo appeared on the projection screen, a group picture from her last birthday party before she passed away. 3 years ago, my wife Mary died in an accident. I created this painting, Eternity, in her memory. The woman in the painting has her back to the viewer, forever gazing into the distance, symbolizing a longing I can never reach. A soft sigh rippled through the crowd. Mary stood beside me, matching my words with a sorrowful expression. However, a month ago, a miracle happened. I turned to look at Mary. My wife came back. The whole room erupted in astonishment, and many people curiously sized up, Mary. This is my wife, Mary. I took her hand and stepped forward. Back from the dead, it's truly the greatest blessing heaven could have given me. She smiled and nodded to everyone, while my mother-in-law and Tom stood by with smug expressions. However, my tone suddenly shifted. Amidst my joy, a question arose. Is she really Mary? The entire room fell silent. Mary's hand trembled slightly in my palm. So, I did some investigating. The projector switched to a set of comparison photos. On the left was the real Mary. On the right was a photo of her. They look exactly the same, don't they? But I clicked the remote, and the photo was enlarged, the details highlighted. The position of the piercing on the left ear was slightly different, the arch of the eyebrows subtly varied, and the fine lines at the corners of the eyes ran in different directions. These are details that even professional plastic surgery cannot fully replicate. Mary tried to pull her hand away, but I held on tightly. My mother-in-law and Tom also began to grow anxious, glancing toward the exit. More importantly, the real Mary has a feature that cannot be copied. I turned to Mary. The necklace I gave you last night has a date engraved on the back. Can you tell everyone what that date is? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. That was the due date of our first child, the one we lost. I spoke softly, my voice trembling with emotion. Mary designed this necklace to commemorate the baby we never got to meet. The date was our secret, only Mary and I knew. The room fell utterly silent. Mary turned deathly pale, my mother-in-law's eyes widened, and Tom had already started edging toward the door. What surprised me even more, I continued, was that the real Mary could never get pregnant due to an underdeveloped uterus. Yet this, Mary claims she's already 2 months along. I let go of her hand and took a step back. So, who are you really? A flicker of despair flashed in Mary's eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. I am Mary, it's just that old Chinese doctor. The non-existent old Chinese doctor, right? I sneered. Just like the non-existent amnesia, the non-existent miraculous recovery. I turned toward the projection screen. Let's see the truth. The screen played the secretly recorded video of her conversation with Tom, their discussion on how to swindle eternity, clearly audible. This isn't. She tried to explain, but my mother-in-law had already rushed forward. Who are you really? My mother-in-law screamed. You're not my daughter? Auntie, stop pretending, I said calmly. You know she's not Mary. You just wanted to get back at me, didn't you? My mother-in-law's face turned pale. I didn't know she was going to impersonate Mary. Tom just said he needed help to scam some money. Police. Don't move. Several plainclothes officers emerged from the crowd, blocking Tom as he tried to escape. Amid the chaos, Mary took the opportunity to shove me aside and run toward the exit. I chased after her and caught up in the parking lot. Tell me, who are you really? She finally stopped, turned to face me, tears welling in her eyes. My name is Luna. I'm an actress. Tom found me and said if I helped trick you out of a painting, he'd give me $1 million. I needed the money for my sister's medical treatment. Why did they choose me? Why Mary? She shook her head. I don't know. They gave me a lot of information, photos, videos, even your chat logs. I was just following the script. The police arrived and took her away. I stood where I was, gazing at the distant sky, my heart a tumult of emotions. Back in the exhibition hall, the crowd had already dispersed, leaving only Frank and a few police officers. It's all been cleared up, Frank walked over. Tom owed money to loan sharks and was desperate. Your mother-in-law always resented you for not saving Mary, so she helped them plan the whole thing. I walked up to Eternity, gently caressing the back of the woman in the painting. Mary, I can finally give you an answer. The police left with the evidence. Frank patted me on the shoulder. What do you plan to do next? I took a deep breath. Prepare for the final painting. What will it be called? The Pursuit, I said softly. This time, I'll paint her face, not just her back. After the case was solved, my life seemed to return to where it was 3 years ago. Eternity was temporarily held by the court as crucial evidence. Tom and Luna were arrested for fraud, and my mother-in-law was investigated as an accomplice. The prosecution wants you to testify in court, the officer called to inform me. The trial is scheduled for early next month. I agreed, though I was utterly exhausted inside. After exposing the deception, I thought I would feel the thrill of revenge, but what I felt instead was a profound emptiness. Those days spent with Mary that month had allowed me to feel a trace of warmth in life again, even if that warmth was born of lies. Frank often came to see me, worried I might fall into despair once more. I told him not to worry, that I was working on a new piece, The Pursuit. Are you really going to paint Mary's face from the front? Frank asked curiously. For the past 3 years, you've always refused to do that. It's time, I replied. We can't live in the past forever. I moved out of the apartment I had shared with Mary and returned to the old house in the suburbs, the place where the real Mary and I had first made our home. The dust-laden memories in the house brought me both pain and comfort. Mary's studio remained just as she had left it, design sketches scattered across the table, unfinished jewelry drafts pinned to the drawing board. One afternoon, while sorting through Mary's belongings, I discovered an encrypted external hard drive. After several attempts, I finally unlocked it using our wedding anniversary as the password. Inside were backups of Mary's design works, along with some personal photos and videos. One folder in particular caught my attention. Inside a folder named Plan was a series of jewelry design sketches, labeled George's Birthday Special Project. It was then I remembered that, in the months before Mary passed away, she often spoke mysteriously about giving me an unparalleled birthday surprise. Leafing through these design drafts, I couldn't help but be moved to tears. Mary had planned to design a jewelry collection inspired by my paintings over the years, with each piece corresponding to a representative work from my artistic career. The last page was a sketch of a ring, with a dark red stone set in the center, its edges adorned with tiny diamonds, closely resembling the sunrise in my early work, Dawn. This is blood amber? I examined the notes carefully, confirming the name of this rare gemstone. Mary's designs had always been bold, but blood amber is extremely rare in the Chinese market, almost impossible to acquire. How did she obtain such a material? As I continued searching, I found a series of email correspondence screenshots. Mary had actually contacted a gemstone dealer in Myanmar, commissioning the blood amber specifically for this ring. The last email showed that the gem had already been shipped, but the date was exactly 1 week before Mary's death. I immediately called Frank. Help me check if there was a package sent from Myanmar 3 years ago, addressed to Mary. 2 days later, Frank brought news. The package did exist, but since no one signed for it, it was returned. However, according to the shipping records, it was resent a month ago, this time addressed to you. What? I was completely confused. I haven't received any package. Check your old apartment? Frank suggested. Back at my old apartment, the manager told me there was indeed a package, but it had been signed for by Mary. She said it was a surprise for you, so she didn't notify you, the manager explained. This meant Luna had taken the blood amber. I rushed to the detention center and requested to see Luna. Separated by glass, she looked much more haggard than the last time we met, but still wore that face so similar to Mary's. What are you doing here? She asked coldly. A month ago, You signed for a package from Myanmar. There was a blood amber inside. I want to know where it is." She looked surprised. "How did you know?" "Tom asked me to sign for it. He said it was some precious gem. He took it." My heart sank. Tom was deep in gambling debt. A precious blood amber would be a windfall for him. He had probably sold it long ago. "That blood amber is very important to me," I said softly. "It was the last gift my wife left me." Luna was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, "Maybe it's not that bad. Tom said the stone has flaws, its value is greatly reduced, and he hasn't found a suitable buyer yet." Hope was rekindled. If Tom hadn't sold the blood amber yet, maybe there was still a chance to get it back. "Do you know where he might hide it?" Luna hesitated for a moment. "He has a safe deposit box in a self-storage facility on the east side of the city." After getting the address, I immediately contacted the officer in charge of the case and explained the situation. Since Tom was involved in a large sum of money, the police quickly approved the search request. "Mr. George, we've found the safe deposit box," the officer said over the phone. "Inside, we did find the blood amber you described, as well as some other evidence." A few hours later, I retrieved the blood amber at the police station. It was even more beautiful than I had imagined. Within the dark red core, wisps of mist seemed to swirl, shifting strangely under the light. This was the birthday gift Mary had so carefully chosen for me, waiting for 3 years. Back home, I carefully placed the blood amber beside the canvas of the pursuit. The painting was already more than half finished, Mary's face emerging from the blur into clarity, yet it still felt like something was missing. Watching the blood amber glimmer faintly under the light, I suddenly understood how I should complete the painting. The creation of the pursuit entered its final stage. I decided to break convention and incorporate the blood amber into the artwork. This would not only be a portrait, but a hybrid piece that fused painting with the art of jewelry. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Frank frowned. "That blood amber is priceless." "That's exactly why," I said firmly. "Mary chose it for me. She wanted to inspire an unparalleled masterpiece. I will fulfill her wish." For 2 whole weeks, I worked day and night, neglecting sleep and food. I cut the blood amber into thin slices and inlaid them at the spot of Mary's eyes on the canvas, making her gaze truly come alive. I used a special technique to blend the surrounding paint, creating a harmonious transition with the gemstone. From certain angles, the entire painting seemed to be imbued with life, and Mary's expression would shift depending on where the viewer stood. On the day I finished the piece, Frank brought news. Luna had been sentenced to 3 years in prison, but due to her good attitude in confessing, she might serve only a year and a half. Tom, involved in multiple fraud cases, was sentenced to 7 years. My mother-in-law, as an accomplice, received a suspended sentence. "The case is finally over," Frank said. "Are you planning to exhibit your painting?" "Yes. Next month there will be a solo exhibition at the National Art Museum, and The Pursuit will be the grand finale." The curator couldn't stop praising this piece, believing it represents the innovative direction of contemporary art and marks the pinnacle of my career. Indeed, this painting, which incorporates Mary's jewelry design concepts, is in some sense a creation we made together. On the eve of the exhibition, I checked the arrangement in the gallery alone one last time, making sure every piece was perfectly lit and positioned. When I reached The Pursuit, I couldn't help but stop and gaze at it. Mary's face was vividly lifelike, her eyes inlaid with blood amber gleaming under the spotlight, as if she were smiling at me. For the first time in 3 years, I faced her directly, no longer painting only her back. "Mr. George," a stranger's voice called from behind. "Sorry to disturb you, but the gallery has been cleared." He turned around to see a young woman dressed in the museum's staff uniform. "And you are?" "I'm the new curator, responsible for security in your exhibition area," she explained with a smile. "I really like your work, especially this piece, The Pursuit." "Thank you." I nodded. "I'll be leaving soon." She didn't leave, but continued to gaze at the painting. "That red gem is beautiful, almost as if it's alive." "It's blood amber," I explained, "a very rare gemstone." "I know," she said softly, "top-grade blood amber from Myanmar, containing plant fossils, extremely rare." I looked at her in surprise. "You know a lot about jewelry?" She smiled. "I studied jewelry design. I'm just working part-time here." For some reason, Mary suddenly came to mind. She, too, had an almost obsessive passion for and expertise in gemstones. "If you don't mind me asking, who is the woman in this painting?" she asked. "My wife," I replied, She passed away 3 years ago. She was a jewelry designer. I'm very sorry, she said sincerely, then gestured toward the blood amber. This gem must mean a great deal to you. It was the last birthday gift she chose for me before she died, but I only found it recently. She nodded thoughtfully. Setting it into her portrait is the best way to remember her. For some reason, talking with this unfamiliar woman brought me a strange sense of calm. Perhaps it was her love for jewelry that reminded me of Mary. Sorry, I have to continue my rounds. She glanced at her watch. See you tomorrow, Mr. George. See you tomorrow, I replied, watching her leave. On the way home, I felt an unusual peace. The completion of The Pursuit seemed to mark the end of my search for Mary as well. Not forgetting, but remembering her forever in another way. The next day, the exhibition's opening ceremony attracted numerous figures from the art world and the media. The Pursuit undoubtedly became the center of attention, with people marveling at this innovative form of artistic expression. Amid the crowd, I noticed that curator standing aside, watching as well. Sunlight streamed through the skylight of the gallery, falling upon her, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw Mary's shadow. No, I shook my head, warning myself not to be deceived by mere resemblance. There would never be another Mary in this world, just as there would never be another unique blood amber. After the exhibition, The Pursuit was purchased by an anonymous collector for an astronomical price. I donated all the proceeds to a foundation supporting students in jewelry design, establishing a scholarship in Mary's name. Life slowly moved forward, and I began to accept new commissions and create new works. Occasionally, I would think of that curator with a unique insight into jewelry, wondering if she was still working at the art museum. Until one day, I received an email from HL. There were no words, only an image. A sketch of a ring design, the style strikingly similar to Mary's unfinished series. My heart raced as I replied immediately. Who is this? The response came quickly. Yesterday, you brushed past me by the cafe on the street corner, but you didn't recognize me. If you want to know more, wait for me at the museum entrance at noon tomorrow. Is it that librarian? How could she have a design so reminiscent of Mary's style? Filled with anxiety and anticipation, I decided to accept the invitation and find out for myself. The next day at noon, I arrived at the art museum half an hour early. The sun was shining, and small groups of visitors were coming and going from the exhibition hall, but there was no sign of the mysterious person. Just as I began to suspect this might be some kind of prank, a faint trace of perfume drifted by, a scent unfamiliar to me, yet it inexplicably reminded me of Mary. Mr. George, thank you for coming. The voice behind me made me turn around. It was the curator. Today, she wasn't wearing her uniform, but a simple white dress, completely different from Mary's style when she was alive. Did you send the email? I asked directly. She nodded. There are some things I want to tell you, but not here. Will you come with me? We walked through the small park beside the art museum and arrived at a secluded cafe. The whole time, I kept observing her. Her mannerisms, the way she walked, none of it resembled Mary. Yet her sensitivity to detail and her focused attention gave me a strange sense of familiarity. Who are you, really? The moment we sat down, I couldn't wait to ask. My name is Nicole. She looked me straight in the eye. I'm Mary's student. This answer caught me off guard. Mary had indeed taught jewelry design part-time at the Design Academy before she passed away, but she had never mentioned having any particularly close students. I took her advanced design class the year before she passed, Nicole explained. Her guidance benefited me for a lifetime. That still doesn't explain why your designs resemble her style so much, I said, half convinced. Nicole took a folder out of her bag. These are all notes from Ms. Nicole's class and her feedback on my work. You can look at the handwriting and confirm that it's really hers. I carefully examined the materials. It was indeed Mary's handwriting. There were even traces of the pale purple ink she habitually used. Before Ms. Nicole passed away, she was guiding me on my graduation project, Nicole continued. The theme was interwoven light and shadow, blending Eastern and Western aesthetic elements. She gave me a lot of valuable advice, and even showed me a sketch from a private project she was working on at the time. George's special birthday project? I blurted out. Nicole's eyes widened in surprise. You know about it? I only found out recently. I briefly explained the origin of the blood amber. I knew that blood amber would eventually find its way back to you. Nicole said with a smile. Nicole always said it was a destined gift. Is that why you contacted me? Because you saw the blood amber? Nicole was silent for a moment, as if choosing her words carefully. Not entirely. After Nicole passed away, I've been trying to carry on the design philosophy she taught me. Some time ago, I happened to see the news about your eternity being stolen, and then I saw someone impersonating Nicole. I thought I should tell you a few things. She took a letter out of her bag. This is the last letter Nicole gave me after class before she passed away. She said if her surprise plan went smoothly, I should show you this letter. If anything went wrong and she was gone, I should still make sure you see it. I took the envelope. It was indeed Mary's handwriting, and it read, "To my dearest husband." The envelope had already been opened. I didn't know what was in the letter at the time. I just kept it as Nicole instructed, Nicole explained. It wasn't until I saw the news that I opened it. I hope you won't blame me. I carefully took out the letter paper and unfolded it to read. Dear George, if you are reading this letter, perhaps my surprise plan has gone awry. Don't worry, it's just that the plan has changed, and the form of the gift may be different now. The blood amber I picked for you is said to be known as the Eye of Rebirth. Legend has it that looking at the world through it reveals truths that are often overlooked. I hope it can become a turning point in your artistic career, leading you to see new possibilities. All these years, your paintings have always depicted backs, as if you're afraid to face something head-on. I hope this gemstone will give you the courage to paint the front, to capture true emotions. No matter what happens, please remember, love does not disappear, it merely changes form, like this blood amber, which, after millions of years, transforms from resin into a gem, yet still shines. Forever loving you, Mary. The handwriting became a bit messy at the end, as if written in a hurry. I stroked the paper, as if I could feel Mary's emotions at that moment. Thank you, I said, my voice choked with emotion. This means a lot to me. You're welcome. I'm just fulfilling Ms. Nicole's request, Nicole said with a smile. Actually, there's one more thing I'd like to ask your help with. What is it? I'd like to apply for the Mary Scholarship you established, she said, taking a design portfolio out of her bag. This is my graduation project, combining Ms. Nicole's ideas with my own innovations. As I flipped through the portfolio, I was surprised to find that while these designs bore traces of Mary's influence, they also possessed a unique style and innovative touches. In particular, a series called Metamorphosis cleverly combined jewelry with transformable elements, allowing the pieces to change form according to the wearer's mood and occasion. This is outstanding, I praised sincerely. Mary would be proud of you. A hint of joy flashed in Nicole's eyes. Really? I've always worried I couldn't live up to her expectations. You've already moved beyond the learning stage and developed your own style. That's exactly what she hoped to see. As we talked, sunlight streamed through the window and fell on Nicole. In that moment, I seemed to understand something. When Mary spoke of love changing its form, perhaps she wasn't just referring to the blood amber, but also to her passion for art and its legacy. Luna tried to impersonate Mary by mimicking her appearance, but she could never truly replicate who she was. Nicole, on the other hand, looked nothing like Mary, yet she inherited a part of her artistic vision and spirit. Perhaps this is the true gift Mary left me, not the blood amber, but a new possibility, a path out of the past. Nicole's graduation exhibition was held in a small gallery. Though the space was modest, it was exquisitely arranged. Her works were divided into 3 series, representing the past, the present, and the future, forming a complete narrative. This is a brilliant idea, I sincerely praised. From tradition to contemporary and then to the future, it showcases the evolution and possibilities of jewelry design. Nicole smiled and nodded. This was inspired by teacher Nicole. She always says that good design should look back at history, be grounded in the present, and look forward to the future. As I walked through the exhibition hall, I noticed a special display case in the corner, containing only one piece, a seemingly simple ring with a small red gemstone set in the center. This is. I leaned in to read the label, which said, in memory, dedicated to teacher Mary. Yes, I made it from a small piece of blood amber I bought with my own savings, Nicole explained. It can't compare to the quality of yours, but it's also from Myanmar. I examined the design of the ring closely. Clean, powerful lines, with fine silver threads encircling the blood amber, as if protecting the central gem, yet also seeming to radiate light outward. This is very similar to Mary's final design style, I said softly, but it also has your own unique touch. I wanted to create a piece that could both commemorate teacher Nicole and showcase my own style, Nicole explained. The blood amber represents her influence, while the outer design is the direction of my own development. The exhibition attracted quite a few industry insiders, including some well-known figures from the jewelry design world. After viewing the exhibition, an older female designer approached Nicole and offered her an internship opportunity. I stood by, genuinely happy for Nicole. In the evening, as the exhibition was drawing to a close, Frank arrived as well. Seeing me with Nicole, he gave me a knowing smile. New friend? He asked me quietly. Mary's student, I explained simply. Very talented. Frank nodded without asking further questions. After touring the exhibition, he gave high praise to Nicole's work. It blends traditional and modern elements, demonstrating both technical skill and artistic expression, quite rare. Nicole thanked him politely. This wouldn't have been possible without the guidance of teacher Nicole and teacher George. After the exhibition, the three of us went to a nearby restaurant for dinner. During the meal, Frank talked about recent trends in the art market, while Nicole shared her insights on contemporary jewelry design. The conversation was light and pleasant, and I realized it had been a long time since I had relaxed and chatted with others like this. After a few rounds of drinks, Frank received an urgent call and left early. Only Nicole and I remained in the restaurant, and the atmosphere suddenly became a bit quiet. Mr. George, Nicole hesitated for a moment before speaking. I've always had a question I wanted to ask you. What is it? After you finished the pursuit, what are you planning to create next? The question caught me off guard. To be honest, ever since the pursuit, I haven't had any new inspiration. That painting seemed to have drained all my emotions and creativity. I haven't decided yet, I answered honestly. It might take some time to find a new direction. Nicole nodded thoughtfully. Nicole once said that the hardest thing for an artist isn't creating a stunning masterpiece, but finding a way forward after reaching the peak. She really did say that, I recalled with a smile. Mary always saw further than I did. Maybe, Nicole said softly, you could try a new direction that combines your work with jewelry design? Like in The Pursuit, but taking it even further. I recalled what Mary mentioned in her letter about seeing new possibilities, and suddenly I was inspired. You mean, creating a series of works that combine painting and jewelry? Exactly. Nicole said excitedly, your paintings create emotion in two-dimensional space, while jewelry gives it tangible form in the three-dimensional world. The combination of the two would have an astonishing effect. The more we talked, the more engaged we became, even sketching a few concept designs on the restaurant's napkins. Nicole's ideas were fresh and bold, perfectly aligning with my artistic vision, yet bringing a new perspective. As we left the restaurant, Nicole suddenly said, I have to confess something. I looked at her in confusion. I reached out to you not only to deliver Nicole's letter, but also for a personal reason. I hope to learn from you, she said candidly. I want to become a designer like Nicole, someone who not only creates beautiful works but also perfectly blends art with emotion. Her sincerity moved me. You're already on that path, and you're doing very well. Then, may I consult you often? She asked a little nervously. Of course, I'd be delighted. On the way home, a series of new works already began to take shape in my mind. A cross-disciplinary art that fuses painting and jewelry, both as a tribute to Mary and as a new starting point in my artistic career. That night, I had a dream. In the dream, Mary stood in a halo of blood-red light, smiling at me and saying, See, I knew you would find a new direction. When I woke up, I got out of bed immediately and began sketching for the new series. I decided to name it Rebirth. Not only representing the ancient life forever preserved in blood amber, but also symbolizing the rebirth of my artistic career, as well as the inheritance and development of Mary's artistic vision. A week later, I submitted a new series proposal to the gallery and received an enthusiastic response. The curator even suggested holding a special exhibition themed Between Dimensions, a dialogue between painting and jewelry. For this project, I invited Nicole to join the team as a jewelry design consultant. She had just graduated from design school and was both excited and nervous about the opportunity. Am I really up to the task? She asked me in the studio. You understand Mary's design philosophy better than anyone, I assured her. That's exactly what I need. In the days that followed, we worked at a feverish pace. We created during the day and discussed at night, sometimes even working through until dawn. Nicole's ideas flowed endlessly, and I transformed those thoughts into concrete artistic expressions. In the process, I rediscovered the pure joy of creation that I hadn't felt in a long time. One late night, when we finally finished the design for our first piece, Nicole clapped her hands excitedly. "This is amazing. Teacher Nicole will definitely love it." At the mention of Mary, she suddenly realized her slip and looked at me nervously. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's all right," I said with a smile. "I think Mary really would like it. She always hoped I could step out of my comfort zone and try new ways of expressing myself." Nicole let out a sigh of relief, then hesitantly asked, "Professor George, may I ask you a personal question?" "What is it?" "When you faced the woman impersonating Professor Nicole, how did you see through her? I mean, from the news reports, she seemed like an exact copy of Professor Nicole." I pondered for a moment. Superficial resemblance is easy to achieve, but a true personality cannot be duplicated. Mary's perception of art, her attitude toward life, the way she handled details, these were all unique. Just like a work of art, Nicole mused, no matter how perfect a replica is, it can never capture the soul of the original. Exactly. We worked through the night again, and finally established the overall framework for the Rebirth series. 7 pieces, each blending elements of painting and jewelry, together telling a story of loss and recovery, death and rebirth. As our collaboration deepened, my relationship with Nicole gradually shifted from teacher and student to partners, both mentor and friend. Sometimes, when the light traced the gentle contours of her focused profile, I would unconsciously think of Mary. But soon, I realized that this association wasn't due to any physical resemblance, but rather that same dedication and passion for art. "George, you look much more spirited lately," Frank remarked at a gathering. "It's been a while since I've seen you so full of life." "Yeah, the new project has helped me rediscover the joy of creating." "Nicole's a good girl," Frank said meaningfully. "Talented, and she really understands you." I understood his implication, but just smiled without responding. There was indeed a special understanding between Nicole and me, but it was more rooted in our shared passion for art than anything else. At least for now. The creation of the Rebirth series took 3 months, longer than expected, but the results were stunning. Each piece was a perfect fusion of painting and jewelry art, offering both the pleasure of viewing as a flat image and the discovery of 3-dimensional effects brought by the jewelry elements from different angles. A week before the exhibition opened, I received an unexpected visitor, Luna. She had served her sentence and was released early. She looked much more haggard than the last time we met, but her eyes were clearer. "I came to apologize to you in person." She stood at the studio door, her voice low, "for everything I have done." I didn't respond immediately, but simply invited her in to sit down. "I know that an apology can't make up for the loss," she continued, "but I want you to know that I truly regret it." "How is your sister's illness?" I asked. She looked up in surprise. You know. I guessed. "You said you needed money for a reason, and I think that must have been true." "Yes," she nodded. "My sister's surgery was a success, and now she's fully recovered. For the past 3 years, I've been thinking about how to make up for my mistakes, even though I may never be able to." I was silent for a moment, then said, "You know, in a way, your appearance actually helped me." "What do you mean?" "It forced me to confront the past, to re-examine my memories with Mary, and ultimately to find a way forward." I pointed to the sketches of the Rebirth series on the wall and briefly explained this new project. Luna listened quietly, a look of genuine respect in her eyes. "I'm glad you were able to find a new beginning from that nightmare," she said at last. "I hope I can find my own path to rebirth as well." As she left, she handed me a small package. "These are some simple pieces of jewelry I made in prison. The craftsmanship is rough, but each one represents my remorse and blessings. I hope you can accept them." Opening the package, I found several small trinkets handmade from fine wire and colorful glass beads. Though simple, it was clear the creator had poured their heart into them. Nicole happened to come into the studio at that moment. Seeing the trinkets, she asked curiously, "What are these?" I told her about Luna's visit. "You forgave her?" Nicole was a bit surprised. "Not exactly forgiveness," I said thoughtfully. "It's more like understanding. Everyone has their own hardships and choices. What's important is how we learn and grow from our mistakes." Nicole nodded pensively, picking up a piece of jewelry to examine it closely. The craftsmanship is rough, but the concept is ingenious. This person seems to have a talent for design. Perhaps, I said, everyone has the possibility of being reborn. On the day of the exhibition opening, numerous figures from the art and jewelry worlds gathered together. The Rebirth series received unprecedented acclaim. Critics called it a model of cross-disciplinary art, and the gallery owner was overjoyed, announcing plans for a nationwide tour. In the crowd, I saw Luna. She was dressed simply, standing quietly in a corner, admiring the exhibits. Our eyes met in the air. She nodded slightly, then walked away. "Who was that?" Nicole asked, standing beside me. "Someone searching for Rebirth," I replied. Nicole seemed to understand and asked no more. We stood side by side before the pursuit, watching the blood amber refract a strange light under the lamps, like the silent burning of life's flame. "Thank you," I whispered to Nicole. "Without you, this series might never have come into being." "It was your philosophy that guided us, Teacher Nicole," she replied modestly. I was just fortunate enough to be the messenger. In that moment, I suddenly understood the true meaning of what Mary had written in her letter. Love has changed its form. Love exists not only in memory and longing, but also in inheritance and innovation, shining brightly in every spark of artistic creation. And I, at last, had learned how to begin anew after loss, to embrace rebirth while still searching. The success of the exhibition exceeded everyone's expectations. In just 1 month, the Rebirth series was reported on by major media outlets and even attracted the attention of the international art world. A renowned auction house extended an olive branch to me, hoping to include several pieces in their annual highlight auction. "This is an unprecedented opportunity," Frank said excitedly. "If the deal goes through, you'll become a top player in the contemporary art market." I wasn't particularly concerned with commercial success, but I did feel the joy of having my work widely recognized. More importantly, this series opened up a new artistic path for me, freeing me from the creative shackles of the past 3 years. Nicole benefited as well. As the project's jewelry design consultant, she received high praise from the industry. Several well-known jewelry brands reached out to her, hoping she would join their design teams. "Which offer are you planning to accept?" One night, as we were tidying up the studio together, I asked her. "To be honest, I'm still hesitating." Nicole paused her work. "These are all great opportunities, but what? But I want to keep working with you." She looked straight into my eyes. "Rebirth is just the beginning, isn't it?" Her candor surprised me a little. Indeed, the success of this series had opened up many new creative possibilities for us, but I wasn't sure if I should continue such a close working relationship. "You should consider your own career development," I said tactfully. "These opportunities are very rare for young designers." Nicole seemed to sense my hesitation and nodded gently. "I understand." In the days that followed, we were both busy and rarely had the chance to talk alone. A week later, Nicole told me she had decided to accept an invitation from a French jewelry brand and would be going to Paris to work for 2 years. "Congratulations," I said sincerely. "It's a very good choice." "Thank you," she replied with a smile, though a fleeting, elusive emotion flashed in her eyes. "I think this is the best arrangement for both of us." Before Nicole left, we held a small farewell party. Frank, the curator, and a few mutual friends came. The atmosphere was warm, tinged with a hint of sadness. After a few rounds of drinks, Frank found an opportunity to pull me aside. "Are you really going to just let her go like this?" "What do you mean?" I pretended not to understand. "Don't play dumb, man," Frank said bluntly. "You have feelings for her. That's obvious." "That's just professional rapport," I argued. "Is that so?" Frank looked at me meaningfully. "Then why have you been so distracted ever since she decided to go to France?" I was at a loss for words. In fact, these past few days I had indeed felt an inexplicable sense of loss, but I kept telling myself it was only because I had lost an excellent partner. "I know what you're worried about." Frank lowered his voice. "You feel like you're letting Mary down, don't you?" I remained silent. He had touched upon the deepest concern in my heart. "Mary has been gone for 3 years now." Frank gently patted my shoulder. "She would want you to be happy." After the party ended, I walked Nicole home. The night was tranquil as water, and the city lights flowed around us. "Thank you for your help and guidance these past few months." Nicole stopped at the entrance of her apartment building. This experience has meant so much to me. I should be thanking you, I said sincerely. Without you, the Rebirth series would never have been completed. We fell into silence, as if both searching for the right words to say goodbye. My flight is the morning after tomorrow, Nicole finally said. I still have some things to take care of tomorrow. So, this is probably the last time we'll see each other. 2 years will pass quickly. I tried to make my voice sound light. Paris is a beautiful city. You'll like it there. She nodded, a complex emotion flickering in her eyes. Professor George, there's something I've always wanted to tell you, but never found the right opportunity. What is it? I chose to study jewelry design because I saw Nicole's works. She took a deep breath, or more precisely, because I saw the pieces Nicole designed for you. The way she perfectly fused love and art moved me deeply. I didn't know that, I said in surprise. I've always hoped that one day I could be like Nicole, creating art filled with emotion. Nicole continued, her words coming faster, as if afraid she might lose her courage. But now I realize that what I want even more is to create for a specific person, just like Nicole created for you. I understood her implication, and my heart suddenly began to race. Nicole, please don't respond, she gently interrupted me. I just wanted you to know before I leave. No matter how you feel right now, remember that starting over is not a betrayal of the past, but a way of cherishing life. With that, she rose up on her tiptoes and softly kissed my cheek, then quickly turned and walked into the apartment building, leaving me standing alone in the night, my mind in turmoil. After returning home, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, replaying Nicole's words and that gentle kiss over and over in my mind. Suddenly, I remembered a small box in the study, where Mary's last complete letter was kept, a letter I had found while sorting through her belongings. But at the time, overwhelmed by grief, I never had the courage to open. Now, I finally mustered the courage to walk into the study and retrieve that delicate little box from the depths of the drawer. Inside lay a pale pink letter, bearing Mary's familiar handwriting. Dearest George, by the time you read this letter, you may find yourself at a crossroads in life, hesitating between moving forward or staying where you are. My greatest wish is that you can move bravely through life, as freely as your brush glides across the canvas. Love is not a shackle, but a liberation. Memory is not a burden, but a source of strength. If one day you meet someone who can rekindle the light in your eyes, please don't hesitate because of your longing for me. True love is wishing happiness for the other, even if there is no longer a place for oneself in that happiness. Remember, the days we loved each other were complete, with no need for regrets. And now, it's time to paint a new picture, my beloved. Forever loving you. Mary. Tears blurred my vision. It was as if Mary had foreseen my current situation and had already given me her blessing. She was always like this, always able to see further and more clearly than I could. At that moment, I made up my mind. Early the next morning, I drove straight to Nicole's apartment. Professor George? Nicole opened the door in surprise, clearly not expecting me. I have something to say to you. I looked her straight in the eyes, not as your teacher, but as George. I handed her Mary's letter. Nicole read it carefully, her expression shifting from surprise to being moved, and finally, her eyes grew moist. She truly was an extraordinary woman, Nicole said softly, handing the letter back to me. Yes, she was, I nodded. That's exactly why I believe her words. Nicole, cancel your plans for Paris. Stay and continue our collaboration, will you? Nicole looked at me in shock. Are you serious? I've never been more serious, I said quietly. Rebirth is not just the name of an artwork, it's a possibility in life. Are you willing to explore that possibility with me? Her answer was a firm embrace, warm and real, like the first ray of sunlight after a long winter. In that moment, I felt as if Mary was somewhere, smiling down on us, blessing this new beginning. Life is like that blood amber, enduring countless ages of change and sedimentation, ultimately transforming into an eternal radiance. And I, at last, understood what true pursuit is, what true rebirth means. A year later, Nicole and I unveiled our second joint project, Interwoven, at the National Art Museum. This series was even bolder and more innovative than Rebirth, blending Eastern and Western aesthetics with various art forms. Critics hailed it as a significant breakthrough in contemporary art. At the opening ceremony, Nicole held my arm as we faced the media interviews and congratulations from the audience together. She wore a simple white dress, and around her neck was the Eye of Rebirth necklace we designed together, She completed the jewelry part based on my painting. Your collaboration seems even more in sync than your last project, a reporter asked with a suggestive smile. Nicole glanced at me, and we exchanged a smile. Yes, both in art and in life, we found the perfect balance. This indirect answer drew a round of good-natured laughter from the reporters present. My relationship with Nicole was no longer a secret, but we always kept a low profile, letting the public's attention remain focused on our artistic creations. After the exhibition, we drove out to a small hill in the countryside. There stood an ancient oak tree, beneath which Mary's ashes were laid to rest. This was the place we chose, rather than a traditional cemetery, natural, peaceful, just like Mary herself. Mary, the exhibition was a great success today, I said softly to the stone beneath the tree. Nicole's designs were admired by everyone, just as you once predicted. Nicole crouched down and placed a bouquet of white daisies in front of the stone. Teacher Nicole, I've been working hard to become the kind of designer you hoped I would be. I hope you can be proud of me. A gentle breeze stirred, and the oak's leaves rustled softly, as if it were Mary's reply. On the way back, Nicole suddenly said, I've been thinking about something. What is it? If that woman who pretended to be Ms. Nicole hadn't appeared, you might never have found the blood amber, never created the pursuit, and we might never have met. Her words made me fall into deep thought. Indeed, it was the series of events triggered by that deception that ultimately led to everything now. It feels as if, in the unseen, some force has been orchestrating it all. Perhaps that's the irony of fate, I said softly. Sometimes, the worst beginnings can lead us to the best endings. When I returned home, I received an unexpected package. Upon opening it, I found a delicate little box containing a handmade ring. Though simple, the craftsmanship had improved greatly compared to the pieces I had seen before. There was a note attached. Mr. George, thank you for your kindness and understanding a year ago, which gave me the courage to start over. Now I have found a job at a small jewelry shop, and my life is gradually getting back on track. This ring represents my gratitude, and I wish you happiness and well-being on your new path. Luna, I handed the ring to Nicole. After examining it carefully, she remarked, her skills have improved a lot. She truly is talent. Some mistakes in life shouldn't become permanent scars, I sighed. Everyone deserves a second chance. That night, we sat in the studio, discussing ideas for the next series. Nicole suddenly proposed a bold idea. I was thinking, maybe we could try connecting the different stages of our work to create a complete narrative. From eternity to quest, then to rebirth, and intertwined, they're actually different phases in a person's life journey. You mean? A complete story about loss, searching, rebirth, and integration, she explained excitedly, ultimately asking what is the most precious treasure in life. Love. I finished her sentence, no matter what form it takes. Nicole nodded, her eyes sparkling with creative fire. We could call it the forms of love, an unprecedented artistic exploration. Sounds like a long-term, ambitious project. We have time, she smiled, holding my hand. We have so much time. In that moment, I felt a powerful surge of creative inspiration, just like when I first began my artistic career years ago, filled with passion and possibility. But this time, I was not facing the blank canvas alone. 2 years later, the Forms of Love series was exhibited simultaneously in the world's 5 greatest art museums, causing an unprecedented sensation. Critics called it a milestone in contemporary art history, blending painting, sculpture, jewelry design, and other art forms to create an entirely new artistic language. The final piece of the exhibition was titled Eternal Ring, a massive circular canvas depicting every form of love in life, familial, platonic, romantic, and the love for art itself. The edge of the canvas was inlaid with gemstones of various sizes, and under certain lighting, these gems would cast light onto specific parts of the canvas, revealing another hidden layer of patterns. The centerpiece of this work is a massive blood amber. Through intricate optical design, the light it projects perfectly outlines 2 embracing figures. One is Mary, the other is Nicole, symbolizing the intersection of past and present, the fusion of memory and rebirth. On the closing day of the exhibition, in front of the Eternal Ring, I knelt on one knee and proposed to Nicole. The ring was crafted from the very blood amber Mary had once prepared for me, designed by my own hand and fashioned by the finest jeweler. This ring carries the memories of the past and the hopes for the future, I whispered softly. Nicole, will you be the eternal ring in my life? Her tears sparkled under the spotlight. I will. Amidst the cheers, I remembered what Mary once said, love does not disappear, it merely changes its form. Yes, love does not disappear. It exists in memories, in art, in every rebirth and new beginning. It traverses time and crosses space, like that blood amber which, after millions of years, still shines, forever retaining the original warmth and brilliance of life. This is the answer I have been searching for all along. Between loss and gain, between seeking and rebirth, love remains constant, only appearing in different forms along the journey of life. And all we need to do is bravely accept this gift, no matter how it comes to us. On the day of the wedding, the sky was a clear, washed blue. Beneath the ancient oak tree that had watched over Mary, we exchanged our vows. A gentle breeze stirred, making the leaves whisper as if blessings were drifting in from another world. No matter when or where, Nicole said softly, we'll always remember that it was she who brought us together. Yes, I squeezed her hand, and we will always cherish this gift. In the brilliant sunlight, the blood amber ring gleamed, radiant as life itself, enduring the passage of time, yet still shining bright.